Welcome to part 2 with Luke Sampson and Keith Barnhardt on 101 Mobility Conversations. So that was the beginning. And so,
yeah, a couple interesting asides. So Luke mentioned the lady named Lacey. And so Lacey that's her name. She's like Cher, except not. She's her signature on her VA credit card is Lacey XXX. Now, I don't know if they did that as a joke, or if that's really her last name, but that's how her card reads, Lacey XXX. So Lacey was integral in our development. Our first trip to Fayetteville, Andre and I went, and Lacey was working the front desk, answering the phones. Purchasing agents rotate at the front desk, answering the phones and greeting veterans that are there for appointments. And she was working the front desk. She opens the door, and we go, "Hey, we're here to, get signed up as a vendor. We'd like to, do some stair lifts and ramps." And well, it's actually just ramps and auto lifts at that time. That was it, ramps and auto lifts. And she's like, "Okay, do you have a DUNS number?" And we're like, "No." She went, "Yep." Closed the glass door. Like, all right. So I'm like, "Hey, Andre, snoop around, ask around. I'm going to go back to Wilmington and work on a Dun & Bradstreet number." So go back, get a DUNS number. Andre and I go back up there. Lacey's at the front desk again, opens it up. "We got our DUNS number." She goes, "But do you have a CCR number?" We're like, "CCR number? That's a SAM. That's not a SAM registration, okay? Yeah. A SAM registration's your CCR number." So I'm like, "Oh, gee." And so I was like, "No." She goes, closes the door on us again. Well, so we get the CCR number. We're ready to go back up there. We're like, "All right, we got everything." I called Roger. I'm like, "Is there anything else I need?" Because, he's like, No. That should get you, name, address, tax ID number, everything else. Those are the two things you need that you probably didn't have. Well, in the interim, Andre had gotten to know the security folks and had figured out that Lacey's husband was one of the security guards. And so when we went back in, we checked in with the security station, and Andre's like, "Hey, walk us up there and, introduce us to your wife, kind of give us we don't think she likes us very much type of deal, tell her we're cool dudes, And so he walked up there with us, she's like, "Hey, how you doing?" to him, she's like, "Oh God, these guys are back. What do y'all want?" We ended up, she signed us up, and she literally, mostly Andre, she mentored him in terms of how we should react or act with the VA. Yep. In what manner should we conduct ourselves? What forms do we need? Things that we should and shouldn't do out in the field with veterans. She was really, truly integral in us understanding the VA system. And I think we are still today, but that was back then, that was our calling card, in that we understood how the VA worked better than most. And it was really, truly, because of her guidance and her mentorship. And I'll just point this out, like, Lacey's still a friend. She's a friend of the family. She actually left Fayetteville and moved to Greenville, South Carolina, and till her husband could retire in Fayetteville and move to Greenville, she would stay Monday through Thursday at Janice's house, my sister's house in Greenville, work in the Greenville hospital for a couple of days, then Columbia, and then go home for the weekends to spend with her husband. And her and Janice are still great friends. Comes to, for Christmas, cocktails or whatever, and that, just like that's the benefit of developing great relationships. They last.
Yeah.
And it's a testament to Andre. Actually, Andre Garrett's as good as they get when it comes to developing and cultivating a relationship, and we've gotten to benefit from that for close to 20 years now.
Yeah, absolutely. He worked at the mortgage company as well.
Right.
So we were all, Andre covered Raleigh and some
Fayetteville,
some some kind of fill-in spots at the mortgage company that Keith worked at and I worked at.
Well, it's interesting listening to that story because 15 years later, as I'm, still learning the business and I start to understand the relationships. I mean, we now have, hundreds of relationships with VA offices across the country. And you hear these stories about these relationships that have been in place for years. And there's some odd stories out there too about but they're lasting. And, the VA seems to be loyal to those relationships that they can count on. They can get good service and they'll do the work. And I think that's one of the things, at least the new guy I'm starting to see, is that separating ourselves from the competition is we're going to do what you guys started 15 years ago. We tend to do that all over the place.
Well, I think just to kind of piggyback a little bit on that, which is that if you're a new franchise coming into a territory that has access to a VA, you have a little bit of an advantage being a part of 101 Mobility, but the work is not going to change. There's no just open hand. Because you're 101 Mobility, you're just going to be given the business. I think there's way more advantage to being a part of the program today, but you're going to still have to develop the relationships. The PAs in there, the purchasing agents, are going to have to know that they can trust you to do the work, do it right, that you're honest with them, etc. So it's not just a layup just because you're a part of the system to go in and get the VA business. I think that we have an advantage being a part of the program and the system and an FSS contract, and that a history, and they can look at other VISNs or other hospitals or whatever and say that we have a great record with them. That's a good resume to have in there. But I don't want new franchisees to think as they come into the system that it's just going to be handed to them. You're going to have to do the work. You're going to have to prove yourself. It's on an individual basis on how you operate, if that makes sense.
I would say, to piggyback on that, I've been in, I don't know if it's still the number, but there was like 165 VAs, hospitals, VA medical centers when we started the business. And I've been into a lot of them. I'd say more than 50. And I have yet to walk in one where they say, "Oh God, thank God you're here." When we've been waiting on you to show up. They're good. They don't need me. They don't need us. Not once. We have to prove ourselves. We got to prove ourselves over and over and over again. And then with that becomes trust. And with trust becomes the lasting relationship.
That's right.
So with the start of the VA business and everything else, and I love some of those stories, the Cleveland day with the 15 orders, and there was just some great stories there. But what was the trigger to now branch away from the VA and start growing the business and other channels?
Well, I'll take this one.
Good.
So Dave was tasked with growing our sales. So Luke and I started a business 8 months in. We're keeping tabs with Dave on our business, letting him look and tell us where holes are with our financials and all this. And he's like, "Man, you guys are really on to something. This is unbelievable. You've done this in 6 months, 8 months." And I think Luke was much closer to Dave than I was at that time. And I think that Luke and him had started talking about, why don't, Dave couldn't find another job, but he was still getting paid to wind down the mortgage company. And Luke and kind of talked Dave into joining us about a year in, close to a year in. And so the way we kind of divvied up what we did was Dave was in charge of finding our new sales reps, growing our external sales force. Luke was kind of over HR and development and all the forms and all that stuff. And I was over day-to-day operations. And we were about 2 years in, I would say, and we were on a little over a $4 million run rate by then. And we had, 8 or 10 outside sales reps. Chris Mink, Buddy was still with us, Lori Welton, Kowalski, obviously Andre, my sister, a lady in West Virginia, Kathy something, Kathy in Finnegan and in Long Island. and Primo in Pittsburgh. And so we had all these, and everywhere we went, we could generate business. Like, that wasn't the problem. The problem was the execution. There was logistical nightmares, and like from just things like that you don't even think about, because we had no brick and mortar. Everything was outside sales rep, which is what we knew from our previous life. Outside sales rep, find an installer, let's rent a little storage facility, or better case, the installer has some storage in his garage or whatever, and we pay him a little bit for that, and we deliver the stuff to those units, or to the home, and guess what? Nobody's there to accept the unit, or the installer didn't work for us directly. They were 1099, so we didn't quote unquote control them. They don't show up for the install, or they change it on us, or whatever the case may be. So there were all these logistical nightmares. And one day we're sitting in, not here, but in might have been Judge's Road.
It was Judge's Road.
It might have been Judge's Road. We were sitting in a little room in Judge's Road, and I said, this business lends itself to franchising. And Luke and Dave said, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard.
True. That is true. That is true. We say, like, give me a break. You can't franchise this business.
So over the course of the next 3 or 4 months, when I would have a logistical nightmare on my hands, I would just forward it to Luke and Dave and say, y'all handle it. I did, really. Y'all handle it. But just think if we had a franchise owner in Pittsburgh handling this, or in Columbus, Ohio, handling this. Just, and maybe 6 months later, Dave goes, I think this business lends itself to franchising. So it's Dave's idea. It was Dave's idea. Dave's the smart one, for sure. No, but I mean, it was just, and it's honestly, it's not something that I ever thought about before those words came out of my mouth. And to their point, that as soon as I said it, and they were like, "That's a dumb idea," I was like, "Yeah, it probably is."
Yeah.
But then the more we started to think about it and analyze it, and actually look at some of the more successful franchise programs out there, especially the non-restaurant franchise programs, the more successful ones are businesses like ours that are a little nichey, that are not your, like, that's not your run of the bill. It's not, something that people would say, oh yeah, that's easily franchised. Well, this one's pretty successful because, we, not everybody can do what we do, or even know about what we do for that matter, much less think about making it a business. And so the more that we really started talking about it and thinking about it, it just kept building up steam and traction. And I think within several, that was the one. Go ahead.
No, I just think you have to realize that how fast this happened. So, for those of us who have kids, a year is no big deal. It happens really fast. 2 years is really quick. 5 years seems faster than it should, right? We went from opening in 2008, March 2008.
March, April.
Yeah. To selling our first franchise in August of 2010. So going from knowing nothing literally in March of 2008 about this business, nothing, zero. We're a DME company. We're not a access company. We're not looking at access. It was a part of it, but we knew nothing about the business. To literally 2 years later, within 24 months, that we already had a franchise company, a development company coming in to actually build the program. And then we sold our first one in August of 2010.
Yeah, it's crazy. Started prospecting with Andre and Jim in March. Didn't make our first sale, which again was a pair of diabetic socks, in like August.
Yeah, August.
Yeah, early August. We've ended up that year over $1 million of revenue. And by March of the following year, we were on a $4 million run rate.
Yeah.
So in 1 year, we went from zero to a $4 million run rate. And the first 4.5 months of that year were zero. We had done nothing. We were literally going, we gave it a good shot. See, I mean, we were having those conversations. I was like, man, we got to sell something because my babies are starving.
First location was sold to?
Yeah,
Michelle Ragland in Pennsylvania. Reading,
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. Yep.
And then from there, you sold pretty quickly. I mean,
here's what I would say with that. We wanted to be very, very careful, and we were warned about this, which is, look, we could sell as many as we wanted, but that's not how a successful business is built. Make sure you bring on the right people and then be able to support them in the right way versus hiring some third-party company that's come out and sell you out in freaking 18 months and you can't even support them, half of them fail. That's not fair. It's not fair not only to them, it's not fair to the brand long term. And we see it every day. I'm in franchising now, and I see it all the time. That some company comes in, it's got a great spin, boom. All they do is market it up, sell. They can't even run people through training or get space or whatever. And the next thing you know, the brand is gone. And then you have a whole cottage industry of people suing those people. No, we were warned up front. The first 10, make sure they're successful.
And I would say, Dave did a really good job of developing a profile of the person that's going to be successful. And we were really diligent in following that profile.
We turned down a lot of checks when we needed them.
Yeah, for sure.
It was not the right person in the right spot at the right time, and we were like, not going to do it. We needed, in order for good validations and in order to look out further than what our own economic needs were or personal needs were, is look out further than that to say, let's protect the brand by making sure the first 10 that get in here are successful, and not only successful, will validate well for our future growth.
We even put one through training and refunded all his money. We realized during training that this wasn't going to work for him or for us, and it was unfair and we had lots of expenses that we but we were like, the right thing to do is to refund his money because, we both, himself and us as a group understood it was not going to be a beneficial relationship for either of us.
it's the rarest of things for brands to do that.
And
Being
I tell you,
selective and picky is the right way to approach it.
And I'll tell you that, personally, and I know for Keith, and I'm sure for Dave as well, it hurt. There was a lot of things that hurt. We all went 2.5, 3 years without any income at all. Believing in ourselves and a system and a brand and a company, believing it was going to actually happen. And let me tell you, when you got young kids at home and you're selling everything to make this work, and that you're hoping your kids don't know and understand that, we're having ramen or beans. We didn't eat out. I sold everything I had. I drove a 5-speed cloth interior Jetta. No, I'm not disparaging cloth interior 5-speed Jettas. But when you go from, a Sequoia, at the time, it was cool, to a 5-speed Jetta, and that you're driving your hoopty, it was, we're going to make this work, and we're going to commit everything that we have to. But I don't think we would have done it if we didn't believe that we were onto something and that we trusted each other. And I trusted Keith implicitly. I knew I'd worked with Dave, trusted him, that, it was not like that I'm worried about him or I'm worried about Dave or I'm worried about they're not pulling their weight, they're not doing this. It was all hands on deck. That we're going. And that we sat in not only this room, but in other rooms having it out. Where I walked out with my lip, like I was hurt personally because they didn't like some of my ideas or whatever. It didn't matter though. At the end of the day, we all had the same goal, which is like to grow the brand, grow the business, make it profitable. And look, if we focused on I think we'd all agree with this. We focused on the health of our franchise owners. If they were healthy, we're healthy. Quit nickel and diming, and doing this and taking a little piece out of here and taking a piece out of there. Yes, if they're doing well, we're going to do well, right? And I'm not saying that there's any harm in that there's other source of revenue that need to come into the franchise or to be able to provide other services and other means, and so it helps you grow your business. But the goal of a franchisor ought to be that I'm helping each individual market to develop their business and grow their business. So that's driving leads. That's lowering the cost of the goods that they sell. It's not taking their phone calls. I mean, you could have a call center if you wanted to, and schedule an appointment. Well, great, it's good service to have, but you're not out there doing the evaluation or doing the whatever. Well, that's if you can't answer the phone at your own business, I say you got a problem with your own business.
So
anyway.
all business owners want the growth, and you guys were growing like crazy. What were some of the challenges when you started to scale the business and the growth is coming in? After those first franchise owners came on, what were some of the big challenges you guys had to face and overcome to scale the business to what it is today?
The number one is you don't know what you don't know, right? And we still didn't know a lot. Like we still were learning intricacies about our product line and our manufacturers and the state laws and regulations and all that, along with our franchise owners. In a lot of ways, they were teaching us as much as we were teaching them. It's why we were, very beneficial to have people like, Michelle and my sister and Dave and Bill Orr and Matt Reardon and those types of guys are some of our early franchise owners. They were out there literally teaching us as much as we were them. So there was a lot of just that. We didn't know what we didn't know, and we were still learning not only the system, but and more importantly the regulations behind the system. And so, but I would say bigger than that. So if you ask me, when we had 10 franchise owners, what is 101 Mobility? What's your little one-line elevator speech of what's 101 Mobility? I would say we're the preeminent supplier of installed lifts and ramps. That's who we were. We installed every lift or every ramp that we sold. I think that vision, that tunnel vision, held us back initially from even faster growth. Because ultimately, to me, who we are and what we've become we're home modification experts. Now, if that means a lift or a ramp, that means a lift or a ramp. But I'll tell you a job we just did in Virginia Beach 6 or 8 months ago. An agency wanted to buy a guy a $20,000 wheelchair. And they wanted us to verify his measurements, his height, weight, seated, width, and all that before they shipped it to us and we delivered it. And so one of my guys goes out there to do this, and the guy goes, I don't know why I don't even want this wheelchair. I like my manual wheelchair just fine. I just can't move around in my house, because he had shag carpet, older, thick, padded carpet. So my guy comes back, tells me about it. We call the agency. We're like, hey, this guy doesn't even want this chair you're about to spend $20,000 on. Why don't you just pay us to put hard surface flooring throughout his house? and he can keep the chair that he wants, the manual chair that he wants, and we can do that for $7 or $8 grand. And so they were like, really? You just saved us $14,000. I mean, I could have done it for $2,500, but I did it for $7 or $8 grand. But I saved them $14,000, and we didn't do the work. We just facilitated it and subbed it out to a flooring guy. And it's all about thinking outside the box and knowing who you are. And do we install lifts and ramps? Sure we do, but we don't need to. If it's in the realm of helping someone with mobility or accessibility issues, we should be involved in it. Now, if you want me to make build a deck for you because you like the neighbor's deck I built for their VPL, and you just like the deck, that's not what I do, right? I don't build decks. I build decks for my equipment to access them when I need to. And so understanding that, not understanding that early on maybe held us back more than really anything else. And part of that was probably fear, right? Don't want to try to do too much. A big portion of who we are is we do have a hedgehog effect mentality. We do want to know exactly what we do and be the best at it. And so a little bit of that was probably our conscious saying, well, is this really part of our hedgehog effect?
Intentional.
Right. But for me, those two things are really one's just what held us back. The other's kind of where we just had to learn certain aspects of the business that we just didn't know because we hadn't been in it that long. When Luke and I started this business, we had never seen an auto lift before. Once we saw one, we're like, oh, that's what those things are? Oh, yeah, I see one every day now. But we were like, an auto? What do you mean? It lifts a car up? Like, what are you talking about here? No clue. So, I mean, imagine that, starting a business and you never even seen what you're selling.
So fast forward to now, we're in Canada, the U.S. There's nearly 200 locations.
We're in Canada?
We're in Canada. By the way. And as you look back on this and I hear these stories and I love them and I'm learning more every time I spend time with you, but you're both in the business. What's the legacy that you think you're going to leave behind? I mean, this brand's going to live beyond us. This next generation of owners are coming in. I look at guys like Ben in San Diego and others, they're in their early 30s, right? And you think about this, he could be in the business for another 10, 15 years. And this business is still going to be here doing what we're doing. Have you guys thought about that legacy and what you're leaving behind and what it could be in the future?
I mean, I hate even thinking of the term leaving it behind because I don't believe in leaving it behind. And what I mean by that is it means like it's something that I'm not a part of anymore. I don't know exactly how to describe it. And again, it may be emotional for me, and I'm sure it may be for Keith as well. But the initial part of this was so difficult. I mean, it was not easy, but we had no choice. Zero choice. This had to work in some capacity. But we didn't know that lifestyle mobility and medical supply would be 101 mobility and franchisable, and we would be in the access business and we would be doing home modifications, and that's really what we do as a company. We had no idea in the beginning, but here's where we are. And so, I mean, I think it's a lesson to be learned for lots of people that the genesis doesn't have to be the end, right? So it starts off bad, it starts off horrible, it starts off different. Doesn't mean that's what the end looks like or the middle looks like or whatever it looks like. It's the ability to be adaptable and changeable. And that as we saw the opportunities we kind of actually snaked and moved with what was available to us. And then when I think about the legacy is not about me or it's not about Keith or.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever even thought about it in those terms because.
Right. I just want a long-term royalty.
Yeah.
Hey, I'll be here all week. No, it's a joke. It's like I'm more like just like like in awe of how big it's gotten, because we didn't imagine that, at least when we started Lifestyle. I think once we franchised, I think we started to see these potential spikes and visions of what it could be. Never thought international, never thought Canada, never thought Puerto Rico, never thought outside of that. It was kind of like an East Coast version. So look, we all know the old saying, right? The people that got you here are not always the people that take you to the next level. And so I certainly think that Keith or Dave or whatever could have continued on and take us to the next level. I wasn't that guy, right? But that's just me. And so I'm proud, personally, honored that my name is associated with 101 Mobility and will be forever. And I don't think that they'll ever change its name. They may, but I doubt it, because from an alphabetized order, it's pretty significant. That was Dave's wife's.
Pretty powerful. Now, it was
idea.
Dave's wife's idea.
Yeah.
Mobility 101. We're like, but that starts with an M.
We're not number one
Right.
on the
We'll just
alphabetized
put
list
101 in front.
in the VA. And so we just flipped it. Not many people know that story.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm just, I look at it now. It's like, you have a kid, right? It grows up. You had a part to do with it as it's growing up. And then all of a sudden it's a lawyer, and it's off doing its own thing. It's having its own babies. And it's like, wow, I'm just a part of it. But,
Well, I, as the caretaker of the brand today, it's my job to preserve your legacies and the passion and the purpose of this brand. And I know I can speak for the entire team. That's what we need to do. And I'm just grateful that you guys are still involved in the brand. And I'm just grateful that you're still giving me insights and history and helping me, because it's helping take care of your baby. And I just want to thank you for the time today. I think your story is important. It is the brand story, and I think people should know about it. I think it separates us. And I think this is something you should look back on and be proud of. I know we're proud to be a part of it, and we're gonna take care of your baby for you.
I know you are.
If there's one thing that we appreciate about you, it's that. If there's one thing that we most appreciate about you, it's that. We appreciate you for a few other things, but that in particular.
Paying you money on golf courses.
How much do you owe us?
Yeah, I'll get you that check. That wraps up our time with Luke Sampson and Keith Barnhardt on 101 Mobility Conversations. We'll catch you on the next episode.